is Hidden Killers Live with Tony Brueski, Stacy Cole, and Todd Michaels.
And on this episode, we take you back to Stillwater, Oklahoma. The Jesse Mack Butler case. Jesse Mack Butler charged with 11 felonies, essay, attempted essay, battery, and assault and battery by strangulation. You know, type of things that happen in all teenage relationships. Oh, wait. After attacking two 16-year-old girls. One was choked unconscious. The other needed neck surgery. Doctors said seconds longer and she would have died. Police found a partial phone video of the assault because why not tape the event? He pled no contest because he was 17 when it happened. The court granted something called Youthful Offender status, a fun little thing that they have in Oklahoma. A potential 78-year prison term then became a 1 year of supervision, and people are a little pissed. Today, we're unpacking how this all happened, what it says about the justice system that mistakes privilege for potential. Joining me is defense attorney, former prosecutor Eric Faddis. Eric, as a former prosecutor, when you see medical proof, phone video evidence, two victims, one who almost died, according to the doctors, if you're the prosecutor, what's supposed to happen next in a situation like that?
Well, obviously some alarming circumstances in this case. And as a prosecutor, part of your primary duty is to try and protect the community through the prosecution of these cases. But recently it's sort of come to light how some prosecutors are handcuffed in their ability to do that because of the age of the offender. And that is really at the forefront in this case.
But there was a choice made here. They didn't have to pull this lever. They did not have to pull the youthful offender lever. It existed as an option, and I understand its principle for existing. If you go and rob the subway or something, there's bad things. People do make bad choices when they're young, and there can be rehabilitation. It doesn't seem like it was invented for something like this.
No.
Yeah, Tony, I feel like, again, the rationale behind that, and many states have that. Colorado, where I practice, has something similar. Really, the rationale behind it is that, hey, if there is truly a minor who, engaged in a youthful mistake and something bad happened, they want prosecutors to have the option to treat that person in the juvenile system. But many states have the option, like you said, of especially a 17-year-old prosecuting them as an adult. It's called a reverse transfer hearing in Colorado. I'm sure this state has something commensurate. And so why they didn't go that route in such a case has a lot of people sort of scratching their heads.
I mean, obviously, go ahead, Stacy.
This crime, and it is a crime, what he did seemed very adult-like from kind of his approach to it. He was filming it. He realized, I'm not going to get this on video because she's passed out. Wait till she wakes up and do something else. And I hope I'm not getting too graphic because this just makes my stomach turn. This seems like an adult crime. This isn't some mistake like I jumped over my neighbor's fence, I broke the fence, and then their dog got out and got hit by a car, and all these things happened because of my stupid mistake. That's not what this was. Why aren't people in the justice system more pissed off? And you can tell I'm pretty charged, so I'm going to try to hold it back a little bit. But why didn't other people step up and go, no, we can't do that in this case?
Stacy, good question. It's understandable how some folks are heated over this. Look, if he was charged as an adult, he would have been facing something like 78 years in prison.
Yes.
And now he's looking at a sentence, I think, of around 1 year of supervision. I don't even know if there's any incarceration being imposed.
None.
And you're right. That's really the paradigm through which prosecutors handle these cases was this really an adult behavior or was it the behavior of a minor? And all indications are that this was really an adult act for which some believe adult consequences ought to be imposed.
I don't even call it, it's a monstrous behavior. I don't care what age you are. If you're, obviously to carry out some of this, you have to have a certain, you have to be somewhat of a mature human being physically. But this is something where it's monstrous no matter who does it. We're talking less than 365 days where it would tick over into adult territory and he couldn't qualify for that youthful offender status. I mean, obviously you can't get into the mind of this specific DA or the prosecutor or the judge, but I mean, how typically does a prosecutor decide whether to offer a plea in a case like this? And why would one think, oh, this would be applicable here? It just doesn't make any sense from a human standpoint.
Yeah, Tony, when I was in the prosecutor's office, we would look at several factors when these types of cases come in where the perpetrator allegedly is a minor, but they're kind of close to the cusp. You look at of course, the seriousness of the conduct, the egregiousness of the alleged charges. You look at the severity of harm caused. You look at, how the victims are dealing with this and how they're going to have to deal with it for the rest of their lives. And at least when I was a prosecutor, this would be the perfect case to do what's called a reverse transfer hearing in Colorado and charge the individual as an adult such that he would face adult prison consequences. Here, I just can't fathom what rationale they would have had to say, oh no, instead of, protecting the community and putting this person away, we're just going to have them be on what's tantamount to probation. It's just kind of mind-boggling to me, especially with someone who's 17. If he was 12 or something, then that's different. But you're right on the cusp of the technical threshold to be an adult, and it's certainly an adult act.
Don't you guys stand around in the break room? You've got your coffee cup, and you're like, "What are you working on today?" And doesn't this come up? And I'm going to swear here. Doesn't your colleague go, "What the fuck, dude? You can't do that"? I mean, are there discussions behind the scenes about these things, or is it just, nope, we're going to do this because, the father is the former director of the OSU football team or whatever team it was, and he's a prominent individual in the community, so tread lightly. How does this work?
Totally. So yes, those discussions are had. I've been privy to them. And you have kind of a round table and you talk about, hey, should we pursue this person in the juvenile justice system, or is it more appropriate to pursue them in the adult criminal system? You talk about different considerations. Now, the prominence of the defendant or their family is really not a valid consideration on which to make such a decision. But those considerations have arisen during such conversations, sort of in back rooms of prosecutors' offices, and sometimes it's kind of hard to speak out. Sometimes you feel, especially if you're a younger attorney in the office, like you might receive some ridicule or pushback or condemnation for going against the grain in terms of what leadership wants to do.
Do you see that more in smaller communities like this? I mean, Stillwater's only like 50,000 people. The judge has been there basically her whole life. Everybody kind of knows everybody. It's one of those type of communities. Not saying that's a bad thing, but it also can be kind of a toxic thing when it comes to decision making and the idea of second chances or not seeing reality on reality's terms when one of these, one of their own is capable of doing things like this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in these smaller jurisdictions, like you said, everybody knows everybody. And so, there are considerations that sort of seep into that conversation that might not appropriately have seeped into that shouldn't be considered. But, when you're looking at, hey, I know the guy's dad and how is the public going to look at this? Is this going to cause harm to the defendant's family? These sort of questions come up more often in a close-knit rural or smaller community than they would in a large metropolis.
It's asinine. I mean, it really is. I get it happens. I know that, this is a reality of it. But at the end of the day, I mean, when you put everything into play here and like, okay, I mean, this son's horrible actions that he did, will it then reflect negatively on the family? Yeah, it will, inevitably. It doesn't mean that the dad, his accolades or whatever he's done makes him a bad person or anything. But yeah, you're going to be looked at a little differently because your kid did these sorts of things. But it makes it even worse if you basically side with the monster, side with your kid who's done these sort of things. And I'm not saying he has. I'm just kind of speaking more generally in situations like this, where you have someone in a community of a certain ilk, of a certain job title, of a certain status, for whatever reason it may be. Oftentimes we're talking about sports, where we are more concerned about, well, how is this going to affect our athletic program versus how is this going to affect these two young women who are 16 who now are going to have to look behind their shoulder every time they walk out into public and walk into the Walmart because they're afraid they're going to see their perpetrator just bowling around doing whatever he's going to do because he's free after one of them nearly died. It's like we're all this concern because it might affect the score of our teams versus the psychology of the well-being of these young women.
Yeah, I mean, in no statute book that I've ever read does it contain a factor that the prosecutors can consider in terms of, how is this going to affect the commerce of my small town or something like that. But you better believe, we all like to think that, hey, everything is objective and above board. They're doing it by the book. And that's just not the case. There are good old boys networks. There are influences that creep into these determinations. And I can't say whether it did in this case, but there's certainly the specter of it when you look at such a disproportionate outcome for, as you said, what appears to be such a monstrous act.
There's no oversight either of like an oversight body that reviews decisions in real time. Could the public pressure change this? Because the public is outraged over this, especially in that area. They are pissed the F off.
You bring up a really important point, Stacy, because there is really not a ton of sort of like supervision of prosecutors exercising their discretion. And, on the one hand, we want them to be able to say, hey, this case is less serious or this case mandates a different outcome for these reasons than other cases. On the flip side, we don't want prosecutors kind of running amok and doing injustice and considering things that they shouldn't be considering. But when that happens, who do you go to? You can't go to the court. The best the victims' families could have done was gone to the court and say, hey, we don't agree with this plea agreement. And oftentimes the judge will still side with the prosecutor and say, hey, he's the pro, he's the one who's charged with making these determinations. I'm gonna side with him. And then what are the victims' families left to do? There is hardly any recourse when things like this happen, and perhaps there should be.
It's almost you're waiting for the next offense. And then it's, see, told you so. And that seems...
Tony, you're right. There will be. Think about this monster.
Yeah, the odds are there.
I have known people. Yeah, this is not going to be his last rodeo.
Yeah. I mean, I hope to God it is, but in my opinion, I highly doubt it will be. Just if there's no consequences for actions like this. Let's talk about the actual, the way that this went down, choosing no contest. Is this about avoiding civil suits or optics for the judge? Why no contest on something like this?
I am likewise puzzled as to why the judge accepted a no contest plea. Judges typically are not required to accept that. And in Colorado, where I practice, they're extremely rare. And I've seen defendants go to a judge and say, hey, I'm not going to plead guilty. I'm not going to admit my wrongdoing, but I'm going to plead no contest and say that, hey, I can't defend against these charges. Could there be some civil benefit on that? Potentially, whereby the defendant is saying, hey, even though there was a conviction, I never agreed that I did this. Whereas if there's a guilty plea, that's an express admission that they did it. So perhaps they're sort of posturing for that civil suit down the road. But for the prosecutor to offer something so lenient, for the judge to accept not only the lenient outcome, but also the no contest plea, really kind of raises some eyebrows. It's just not how things would be done typically.
Yeah, it does raise some eyebrows. That's why I think there's a gazillion people on the court steps still down there. And I'm thinking like, hey, if I had some extra time, I might go for a little drive and join the folks. I
didn't mean to interrupt Tony, but one of the people in our chat, Robin, said, Tony, I went to the rally yesterday in Stillwater about this case. Thank you for covering this case. So I think it's got quite the impact.
Good. Please keep sharing this because more people need to be aware of the madness that's going on here. So many times we see things like this happen, and is it more so, well, we know we're going to make some waves and people are going to be upset for a little bit, but then, there'll be another squirrel and they'll move on in a few days or weeks. Is that, obviously this is just conjecture, but do you think that's how this is being processed in their minds of, well, we're just going to, battle down the hatches for a few days and then this will blow over and you'll be fine. Or do you think they saw this coming? Do you think they saw the backlash that was going to erupt after a decision like this is made? Or is this new territory for a lot of judges and a lot of DAs where we're in a kind of a new atmosphere where people get mobilized a hell of a lot quicker than they used to when bad decisions are being made?
Tony, in my appraisal, and I don't know the specific judges or prosecutors involved, I'm not casting any specific aspersions on them, but I can't help but wonder if some of these judges are used to kind of the old way where you got a good old boys club and you give somebody a break, you do somebody a favor, and maybe there is a few folks who are upset, but then it kind of, fiddles out and back to business as usual. But in the modern era, with the access to information, the ability to transmit information throughout your state, throughout your country, throughout the world. So many more people are aware of this. I doubt you and I would be talking about it if it happened 10, 15 years ago and was kind of just swept under the rug. But now, thanks to, folks like Robin and other people who are giving significant concern to developments like this, it's not something that is just going to be ignored, whereas in the past, perhaps the judges thought it might be.
Well, and how different is it today, too, where if he essentially, my understanding of it is, if he keeps his nose clean, basically, for the next 365 days, this gets expunged off his record. Like, it's just like it never happened. And that's great, but we don't live in a world anymore where it's just your legal record that follows you around. I really feel like if you're looking from a PR standpoint on this, of everybody thinking of their life going forward and what's the least amount of damage that I'm going to do, had there been some sort of sentence here, and obviously he didn't want to do 78 years, I think he should have, but had there been just something, maybe that they could have come to some sort of agreement, settlement on, maybe a few years, maybe something, not something more than this probably would have never made any sort of headlines. We wouldn't be talking about it. Nobody would be talking about it. But because they went to such an extreme and such a far length, this kid's name will be known for the rest of his life. Anyone who will ever search this guy in Stillwater will find these stories, will see the monstrous actions that took place because they wanted to go down the route of basically no accountability. And I don't think they're seeing the long game here, because this shit on YouTube is going to follow him make a far more impact than somebody going to the courthouse and looking up the records and finding all that. Yes, on a legal standpoint, you'll find that. This is what anyone's going to follow him when he's attempting to date again at some point in his life.
Tony, to that point, I so have to interrupt. Last night, I must have watched 7 or 8 videos on TikToks, excuse me, I'm being old here, where women are like, ladies, look at this picture, and they showed him like different views. If you see this man in public, and moms, if you see that your daughter's dating this man, so they are putting the warnings out there. So social media is doing its job.
So we've gone back to public shaming because our judicial system is not working. So it's like villagers and pitchforks.
That's exactly what it is.
Which can go horribly wrong, too, if you're going after the wrong... And I'm not saying this is the wrong person here, but it can go horribly wrong when all the villagers want to go against somebody that they think is a bad person when, in fact, they're not. Again, that's not what's happening here, but that's the path that we end up going down and the errors that can take place when our system is failing us so greatly.
Yeah, Tony, and that's the hope, right? That there would be some record of this to caution the public against what could be a very serious threat to their safety. But with how this is played out, there's no guarantee that there would be such a record. If he does get the case expunged, there is not going to be a permanent record of him doing this. Usually when expungements happen, the defendant files a motion to seal the records. And then, later on, it's pretty easy to change your name. It's pretty easy to, from 5 years from now, look a little different. And there have been defendants in the past who have done that and who have led lives after that. And then it comes out, 10, 20 years later, oh, wait, he was the dude who did this. And he sort of fooled everybody for decades. And younger folks in the community who aren't aware of all of this happening in 10 years or so, there might not be those warning signs to be cautious around this person if he plays his cards right, legally speaking.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. But and I'm glad he's going to have to go through those sort of hoops to live a normal life if he wants to attempt one. Because if the system's not going to do its job, then society will. And if he can find his way to work his way around it, and predators tend to find their ways of manipulating systems, so he probably will change his name, move somewhere else, make himself look different, and hopefully will behave and not do horrible shit to other human beings.
Right.
And if that's the case, then good. But if it's exactly what you said, oh my God, he's that guy. Yeah. But at least there's those hoops. At least there's those barriers he's going to have to go through to try and live a normal life. Because yes, it can be expunged, but you're not going to expunge YouTube. You're not going to expunge TikTok. You're not going to expunge all of the stories and the literally thousands of people by the day that are now seeing this idiot's picture and letting the world know what his name is. That's always going to be there when you look it up. And just changing your name also, I think that's another one of those things where we look today and we go, well, name changes, that's something you could do to change the identity. Visual identification is becoming quite a thing when it comes to search recognition as well. So you can change your lookup. That's going to be probably his best bet. Change your lookup significantly, because you can start searching things just based on facial features, and you could find the guy. So that's going to be, it's going to be more and more difficult, I guess is my point, for people like him to hide behind some sort of a mask. And thank goodness when the systems and the tools that are at play are able to work for the benefit of the victims and not the predators.
Can you imagine if your daughter brought this kid home?
He'd be dead.
Great, we'd all be out of a job.
Yeah. We would. I'd be in prison, and everybody would be out of a job.
Yeah. But yeah, people need to know. I mean, it's almost like putting his face on a milk carton like we used to do back in the 80s when somebody was missing. Like, have you seen this predator? He's out there, Obviously, you can't do that. But yeah, TikTok is kind of taken over. Even in crows will warn other crows of danger. So we're kind of going back to the animal system and warning each other of it. I actually had a friend send me one of those videos. She didn't even know we were covering this. So it's out there. And I'm in Wisconsin, so I'm nowhere near this guy. Yeah.
And Stacy, what are we going to do when he's back in the community in like a year? Look, people in who if these allegations are completely true and it appears he's been convicted, so this is extreme behavior, usually necessitating years, if not decades, in prison, during which sometimes there are reform measures, there are treatment, there's therapy that can be had. We're talking about 1 year of supervision for a 17-year-old. That is in no way going to be sufficient to address the issues that gave rise to these monstrous behaviors against minors. And so, 1 year from now, the system is just not equipped in that state to adequately address and remedy and try to reform this person's issues that cause them to act this way. And I just don't see any sort of assurances or peace of mind, 365 days from now. Not a lot can change in that period of time.
Yeah.
Do we need to have less acceptance of rehabilitation in our system? I mean, I know it's a lovely idea and it feels good to think it, oh, people can be fixed. Do we just, I mean, do we need to accept as a whole and beat it into society's head as a whole that there are just some people and there's certain behaviors of some people that, if demonstrated, they're not fixable? They're just not. You're never going to see someone like this who's strangling 16-year-olds while they're essaying them. They're not going to be a good human being. Nothing good is going to come of this. And other horrible, horrible behavior, rather than thinking that there is some sort of rehabilitation for people like this. Do we just need to accept, nope, looks like you proved your ability to do this. We don't need you anymore. And that doesn't mean, you can't go execute him. But, I mean, some countries do. Florida now has the ability in some cases. But just an acceptance of you need to be in a cage because you've forfeited your rights out here for what you've done to other human beings.
But that's what the 78 years would have done for him.
Yes, it would have. But just across the board, certain age going forward, like if you're 16 plus or whatever, 15 plus, and you've done horrible shit like this and you're convicted of it and it's just, there's no questioning it. It's literally on video. Should we have some just stricter penalties? The example would be the California's, 3 strikes type thing, where it's just certain laws being broken, certain crimes being committed. There's just zero tolerance for it, period.
Tony, there are, of course, proponents of rehabilitation, and they want to aspire to reform these folks, to address the issues that gave rise to the behavior and hopefully correct them such that there would not be any reoffending. On the other hand, as sort of rosy and as that notion might be, it hasn't always played out that way. And you look at in the sex offender context, sadly, even with substantial treatment in Colorado, the folks who are convicted of that have to go through all sorts of therapies and assessments and ongoing supervision for years and years. And unfortunately, I've just seen a lot of reoffending within that context. Are those people incorrigible? Can they even be reformed? I don't know the answer to that, but I think only falling on one side because it feels good is not the right approach.
No, and that's what I think the problem with our society is the fact that we want to go with what feels good, not what is real. And the answer to that question is no. These people can't be rehabilitated. It's in them.
I do have a question. Eric, what do you think the protesting is going to do? Does it do anything? Could it do anything? So we've got hundreds of people on the I guess, steps of the courthouse with signs and chanting and pissed off. Does that do anything?
I think yes and no. No, in the sense that we are kind of past the point of no return on the state prosecution. There has been a plea that's been entered. It's been accepted, my understanding anyway. And my understanding is that the sentence is imposed or will imminently be imposed, supervision. On the other hand, we've seen sort of social pressure result in sometimes the FBI get involved. Sometimes federal authorities will investigate. They'll investigate not only the underlying case, but sometimes they'll investigate the prosecution of it, what decisions were made. Sometimes they'll investigate the court system and say, hey, do we have a larger systemic issue that is of federal import? And so, could it trigger some sort of federal involvement? Could that result? I don't know precisely if these allegations could even qualify for federal charges, but I think that it's not off the table. And there can be a federal prosecution even after a state prosecution that was successful. So there are some results that can happen from this. And I think we need to continue encouraging the public to do it.
I think a lot of obviously that would be lovely, but if we, like you said, like if we're after, past the point of no return on some of that, the public pressure here on this judge, I think that's what a lot of the people out in in front of that courthouse are there for. Obviously, the judge is an elected position. I think the idea with a lot of them is, let's ask this judge to step down. Let's ask this judge to say your time is up and resign and be done with it. Obviously, you can't necessarily go in and fire a judge, but what could be done from a community standpoint if they're sick of a certain judge making horrible decision after horrible decision? Obviously, there's elections and things of that nature, but beyond that, what is the recourse for a community that is irate at a judge that said, yeah, this is okay, we're going to go down this road?
Sure. So as you mentioned, many jurisdictions, judges are elected, as are prosecutors. And so there can be some political pressure in terms of a changing of the guard during the next election, even during a term. And even when the judge might not be elected, you can still, it's essentially like bringing a vote of no confidence. Now, you have to get political will behind it. You have to usually get it on the ballot. But that's something that can be done. But it's also kind of a warning to these authority figures that, hey, look, if you guys step out of line, you're doing something inconsistent with the people's will, we're going to let you know about it. And now with the emergence of social media, we're going to let the world know about it. And that can function as a disincentive for these authorities when the next case comes around. Now, that doesn't do substantial justice to the victims in this case, which is a tragedy, but there are future positive consequences that can result from bringing this kind of public pressure.
Well, there's a lot of public pressure. We just had another comment from Robin, who is from this area. The Stillwater School Board sent out an email. If kids left school, it would be an unexcused absence. The students walked out at noon and joined this rally. So
good. The
young people are pissed. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. And they should be. And
yes,
everyone should be. And yeah, these idiotic, powerful people that make such horrible choices need to be held to account.
Yep.
And this is going on everywhere. These absolute horrible decisions that are being made. Good. Keep letting your voice be heard and keep protesting this, because these people need to go. This judge needs to go. This DA needs to go. This monster needs to be in prison. Like we said, maybe that's beyond the point of repair at this point. But if you're going to be part of the problem, if you're going to protect predators, you too are a predator. Maybe not in the direct sense. Maybe not in the direct sense that you were the one that was choking out the 16-year-old, but you were just as good as standing there holding that camera. If you're allowing this to go on. And
Tony, what's your big saying that you've been saying all along?
Yeah, it's I don't know anyone that protects predators other than predators. I don't know anyone that protects pedophiles other than pedophiles. It's just, it doesn't exist in human nature, in humanity. It doesn't, unless that is your MO. Unless you're just an idiot and you don't know what the hell you're doing. So it's one of the two. You're an idiot or you're part of that ecosystem. So let's move on to another case that a lot of us have been talking about, and people who don't know how to navigate life in any sort of way that's not going to continue to cause outrage at them. She shot a mother through a locked door. 4 kids then watched their mom die. And now from a prison cell, she's written a letter saying that she is the victim, threatening to sue those same kids for defamation. This is the story of Susan Lorincz, the perfect neighbor, and the kind of twisted self-pity that somehow survives even after conviction. Eric Faddis, former prosecutor and defense attorney, with us to break all of this down. And I thought maybe we were done with this story until Susan decided to threaten the children through a handwritten letter that she wants to sue them for defamation and libel from prison. I'm assuming you probably have had a chance to take a look at the lovely handwritten letter. From a legal standpoint, where does this stand?
Gosh, if I am her attorney or even formerly her attorney, I am just, slamming my head on the desk saying, why in the world didn't you send this letter to your attorney first before having it be in the public domain? Not only the optics, obviously horrible. She killed somebody unjustifiably, a mother who's left, children without their parental figure now. But on top of that, now she's saying, hey, let me go after the kids. I've already, if she hasn't done enough harm to this family's life already, my gosh, let me continue to antagonize these minors. It is just kind of shocking and so tone deaf, so detached from reality.
Is there any scenario here where the Owens family, those kids, even need to respond to this legally, or can this just sit out in the ether?
The letter itself is not a formal legal document commencing a legal action. So the defendant would have to take further measures to actually bring a counterclaim of defamation and formally file that. And until that happens, the Owens family has no legal obligation to discuss it. It sounds like Susan was trying to sort of gain some leverage in this wrongful death case that's going on, a civil case that has followed the criminal prosecution. But this is not the way to do it for so many reasons. It doesn't really confer any significant legal leverage, she's just digging herself a bigger hole.
How do you get control of a client like that? I mean, you've represented offenders, and I'm sure there's been several that just can't accept guilt sometimes. I mean, what is happening there psychologically when someone still claims victimhood after a clear conviction and just continues to dig their hole deeper? How do you get that under control?
Yeah, Tony, I've seen clients who are similar to her who have, my appraisal is that it is so difficult for them to come to grips with what they've done, to accept the guilt, to accept the shame that might come from that instead, if they can just be in denial and sort of fabricate this rosy world in which they are actually the victim and they're actually the righteous one, it's a lot more comfortable to live in that world, even if everyone's saying, hey, that world doesn't exist. What are you thinking? And sometimes there is no way to reach these folks. You can have a come to Jesus talk. You can show them evidence. And oftentimes that is not sufficient to dispel them of this myth that they've created about themselves and their actions.
This is obviously a case that we're watching, we're keeping an eye on it. We're watching it closely. We're seeing the interactions and all the movements that anyone does in this, microcosm here. How common is it where you have the offenders behind bars, the ones that clearly are guilty of their crime, but just cannot accept it? How often and how common is it where they are drafting their own legal filings and things like this, even after the rest of the world has moved on, because they know of their guilt, but that person just can't accept the consequences?
Incredibly more common than most people would think. And my firm still gets letters at least weekly, if not more frequently, from incarcerated folks. And hey, look, some of them are falsely convicted. Some of them shouldn't be in there.
Sure.
Some of them didn't do it. But there are ones where you read it and then you look up the case and you look up the alleged facts, you look at what a jury found, and you're like, gosh, that doesn't seem, that seems like a complete departure from what's written in this letter. And they'll send the letters to lawyers, they'll send it to the court, they'll send it to prosecutors, they'll send it to news agencies. They got a lot of time on their hands and they feel like they weren't heard. Whether that's true or not is a different question, but they put forth so much effort to propound their narrative the way that they see it, regardless of outside circumstances and kind of objective determinations to the contrary.
Gen Z 367 says they should put her and Donna Adelson together.
Yes, that would be a great show, wouldn't it?
The Battle of the Narcissists is what she said.
Nightmare blood rotation. Yikes.
That'd be great. The two really, they do remind me of each other a lot. I've been thinking the same thing of just, they are the persecuted ones and what do you do? Is anyone under any sort of legal obligation if she doesn't have an attorney anymore? And I don't know what her status is, if she has a public defender or if she has a paid attorney, whatever it may be. Is anyone, a public defender, under any sort of obligation now that she's incarcerated, now that she's going to be spending the next 25 years of her life, she'll probably die in prison? Is anyone under any sort of obligation to do anything with the random shit she puts on a piece of paper and makes claims about and sends out and says it's a legal document? Does anyone have to do anything or file anything whatsoever for her?
Well, you raise a good point because usually courts will look at pro se unrepresented folks and what they're submitting, and they'll give them a lot of leeway. They'll give them the benefit of the doubt, and sometimes even if the letter doesn't conform to these sort of formatting rules and stuff like that when it comes to a legal filing a motion or something like that, sometimes the court will look at it and say, this is pretty much a motion. This is pretty much a motion to add a counterclaim of defamation. And so there's at least a chance that her writings might be viewed as such in the ongoing wrongful death case. And if that were how it was viewed by a judge, perhaps she has raised a claim of defamation, and then that would require the other side to respond. I think it's unlikely, but judges give pro se folks a lot of leeway on stuff like this.
And essentially, that's just re-victimizing the people. It's re-victimizing these kids. It's re-victimizing whoever is going to have to foot the bill for trying to defend themselves against a monster who's claiming, you called me a monster. Well, you shot through a door and didn't know who was on the other side and killed a woman. So, yeah, you technically fit that bill. But if she's claiming and screaming and saying on paper, I'm not a monster, those people still then have to find the resources to defend themselves against said monster again. That just doesn't seem right.
Totally. And one thing these measures sometimes do is they really cause congestion within the courts. They cause delay in certain cases, which is a delay of justice for the litigants. These the family members want to have some civil remedy for their mother being feloniously and wrongfully taken out of their lives. And this is just going to add, if it is considered a legal filing, months potentially to when that justice might actually occur, if it ever occurs. And on top of that, it's going to cause the lawyers to do more work. Perhaps, I don't know their billing structure in the case, but perhaps that causes more of an economic burden on the litigants, on the plaintiffs themselves. And so these unrepresented folks can really muck up the process and delay justice, sometimes rightfully, but oftentimes wrongfully.
When and how does a judge step in and just say, nope? This is nothing. Like, nope, we're not going to waste our time. We're not going to do any of this. Or are they obligated to hear some of these things, no matter how absurd they may be?
They're probably obligated to at least review whatever has been submitted to them, to review the letter. But as cases go on, I've seen judges sort of receive, they begin receiving like letters every week from the defendant or something. And at some point they say, hey, you're abusing this process. You have never submitted anything that has merit. And so, that is the lens through which they're going to view future submissions. And ultimately, you can't silence them, though. You can't say, hey, don't ever send me a letter again, because that could be viewed as a constitutional violation and inure some benefit to the offender behind bars. So it really, like I said, can congest the legal system when these types of filings by unrepresented folks are submitted.
So these people, instead of craft time, they're sitting here drafting letters instead of making like origami swans.
But possibly both, there's they got a lot of time in there, and you should see how many submissions we receive as a law firm alone from incarcerated folks.
Is there any assumption of privacy when a letter like this is sent out, or if you're sending it out from prison? Are you going to assume it's going to get out, like in this case, that it's going to further destroy any shred of reputation you may have out there in the public ether? Or I guess that's the other part of it, public shaming on this. Does that maybe make one think twice before writing a letter like this and throwing it out into the ether if one is so concerned about their how the public views them?
Tony, for some, there certainly could be that disincentive, but for others, I think some of them are so in denial. They've distorted reality so much that they think the public likes them. That they
Sure.
think, oh, the public must agree with me. That at least a large portion of them, because how could they not? I'm in the right here, obviously, and this is such a persecution, and so that they perhaps have this expectation, that this ridiculous belief that people might side with them if they keep doing it. And unfortunately, I think that is a lot more common than we think.
Yeah, it's nuts. Anything in the comments on this, Stacy?
Yeah, Gen Z again said, all I can hear is the Mortal Kombat song in my head. Some great comments today.
Yeah, I can see. I was surprised. I mean, she looks more and more like the Wicked Witch of the West. The more every time we see her, doesn't she?
I think I said that immediately. That she reminds me of Margaret Hamilton, who played the Wicked Witch. Yeah, she looks like her.
Every time a very big cut to poor Margaret Hamilton.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. She's a lovely lady. I met her when she was alive, and she was very sweet. She was not a witch at all, but she played it. She played it well.
You said that the other day, and every time I see a picture of her now, she's just looking more and more like the Wicked Witch. It's kind of crazy. Eric Faddis, defense attorney, former prosecutor, as always, thank you so much for coming on and giving us your insight into these cases. We do greatly appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Until next time, for Stacy and Todd and all of us, I'm Tony Brueski. We'll talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Brueski and the Hidden Killers podcast.